So here we are, another Friday, and it is Destination Unknown. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Man, this is going to be a good one. We're going to do money and religion tonight. They seem to be always connected, and being so deeply involved now with money, deeper than I have ever been. I've always loved money, as I think most people do. I've always had a great respect for money, as I think people who are smart do. But in terms of being in the money business, being involved in crypto, having a cryptocurrency company that's built on top of a blockchain, you think about money a lot.
Yeah. And
as of late, the intelligent people that I've been speaking with in the space, more and more we find ourselves grappling with the fact that, wow, this is really an imaginary good. We talk about Bitcoin as the imaginary good, but really, money's the imaginary good.
It is. And I actually have, when we talk about the history of money later, I've got a little bit on that, and I think it might spur some conversation, certainly between us, but maybe even amongst our commenters, because it's a I'll wait till we get there. But it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand, and once they do understand it, then it bothers them.
That's good. It should. I think when you really think about money, if it doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies a little bit, then you have not thought hard enough about it.
Or you don't really understand how it works.
I think that's probably, and I think that's why it's an appropriate topic for Destination Unknown, because pretty much everything that we talk about here, they are the things that we're living with every day and that most of us know something about but take for granted.
Yep.
But the more you think about it, the more you get the willies. And I think that's why money, and particularly I think religion along with money, and tracing a little bit of that in the history, I think that's appropriate.
Yep, and what I love to do is connect dots, right? So, I've had opportunities to connect my own dots over the years, and other people have connected dots for me. And you, sir, have connected some dots for me. It's been fantastic.
Hey, now.
But, that's the thing. Is like if you can have an educated conversation, or at least an informed conversation with somebody, and you both come out the other side richer, in a intellectual sense, that's worth doing.
But maybe in a literal sense.
Maybe.
If money is nothing but mind stuff, which we'll try to dive into that and figure out, we'll try to maybe figure out, is money real? And if it is, what makes it real?
Well, I think we could definitely talk about that.
Okay. And so that I don't forget, wine, we have a wine sponsor. And our wine sponsor is Christine, and this is the note that Christine sent. Do you have?
Oh yes.
You have the wine. What are we drinking? This is quite a good wine.
It is a Willamette Valley Vineyards.
Okay.
2015 Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. So this is the note that Christine sent along. Hello, Vin and Dave. Because I'm so happy to be the instigator of your epic friendship, I went looking for a special wine for tonight's show. Consider it a memento of love and admiration for the way the two of you clicked as friends and cohorts. I'm excited the two of you found in each other someone to finish your thoughts and sentences. I cannot believe the destinations you get to in only 2 hours. I look forward to many more thought-provoking episodes. This wine is from Oregon's Willamette Valley Vineyards. Their 2015 Estate Pinot Noir. Wine Spectator gave it a 91. Supposed to have savory cherry aromas that open to deep, dark plum with smoky herbs and spices that linger through to refined tannins. I would say that pretty much nails it. Enjoy it with my love and every good wish. Slanta. Christine. Thank you, Christine.
Right. Thank you.
This is excellent. It will be enjoyed in good health. And yes, I see the note on here that you have put. I've been forgetting to request. I don't even know what it is. Here's the deal, folks. we have the Vin and Dave Destination Unknown podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. We've got already, without really promoting it, right? We've already gotten quite a few reviews on iTunes. They are all 5 stars. Now, I'm not telling you to give us 5 stars, but what I am saying is this. I'm saying that if you will go to iTunes and if you will leave us a review, if it just so happens to turn out that those reviews are good, I believe it takes 20, and we will wind up in the new and notable section of iTunes. Why is that important? Well, primarily it's important because that will mean more listeners, and that will mean more wine sponsors.
Yes. Let's keep focused on our priorities here.
There's method to my madness here. What I really want is I think that we need to broaden the demographics so that we can broaden the wine selection, and because that is going to give you the best show every week. Because we're dedicated to being here on Friday evenings. We enjoy it. We love it.
And very likely would be doing this anyway without the microphones.
That's right. That's so. Well, and we had in the past, and that's sort of how this show even like wound up existing in the first place. So that's it. iTunes, if you find yourself over there, particularly if you are an iTunes listener and you are checking us out on iTunes, pop on over, give us a little review. If you think we're doing good, thumbs up. If we're not, well, don't leave the review. No, go ahead. Go ahead and leave the review for us. Okay, so then without further ado, let's get into money and religion and the combination between the two. Now, what I find interesting is, as always, Dave has the background research that he has done. But this is interesting. We are hearing a vehicle of some sort backing up, which is reminiscent. Some people will remember when I had my studio in Las Vegas for the Vin Armani show, my Monday show. It was in a light industrial area, and you would at times hear the backing up of a truck. Now, we are literally in the middle of like an urban woods environment in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I cannot escape the beeping backup. It's a little late for them to be doing that. But, okay, so you did your research.
Yes.
I had something that I put together as well.
Awesome.
And come to find out, you say money, you say religion. We basically put down, what would you say, the starting point? Was that your starting point?
Well, actually,
You have another starting point?
Well, okay.
Go for it.
Well, I thought we could start just by saying how we got here, right? Which was last week, we were talking about Satoshi Nakamoto.
That's right.
And your contention that he is basically a proxy for Jesus. And, I'm like, yeah, I'm bought in. That sounds reasonable. The story lines up. So that we then at the end of last episode, we're like, well, hey, let's just talk about money and religion next time. And so now that's what we're doing. So I thought, let's go ahead and I think let's start where we both ended up in our show prep. So
you didn't have anything before that?
Well, I do have like a history of money, but I don't know if we should do that later.
Okay. No, let's do it now. Let's do it now.
Okay. So our premise, right, is that money and religion are inextricably joined. Why would that be? Well, really, it's because that has been the history of money since the beginning. So the word money and mint and monetary and monetize and all the money-related words come from Juno Moneta, which refers to the Roman goddess Juno with the added epithet moneta, which means the one or the unique.
Like mono is
correct.
One.
Yep. So it was like, Juno the one, or the unique or whatever. So Juno was a patron goddess of Rome, protector and special counselor. And the temple of Juno Moneta, located in the center of Rome, was the site of the first Roman mint and also served as a storehouse of legal books and documents. There was absolutely no separation of church and state. It was exactly the same thing at the time.
Okay. So do I have this right? The first mint was in Rome.
Yep.
So yeah, so Roman coinage. This is the first time that we get coinage. Now before that, we've still got precious metals being traded. We've got other goods being traded as well, probably other forms of money. Coinage gets really interesting because, and I have a video as part of the Ascendant Project that's the evolution of money, where I talk about this a little bit, because it's something that's always fascinated me. But the idea that, because the question is always, and it's something that we do even now, why do we put the face of the sovereign on our money? Why is that?
I
trick
thought
people a lot about that.
I think it's to trick people into trusting it.
See, I don't think it's... I'm pretty sure it's not tricking people into trusting it. I'm pretty sure that the reason that is there is to tell you what the punishment or who will be delivering punishment or who you are committing a crime against if you were to go and mint this yourself.
I like that better.
That it's really like it's the authority of this individual that says it's legit.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this traveling and continuing through to the present day. I mean, take out the money in your pocket, no matter where you are, and look, there's some authority of the state that is on your, whether it's now it's moved in the more modern money like the euro. It's more about symbols, right? So it's the first started out as the symbol of Caesar, or the symbol of the leader of Rome, or perhaps even a god figure might be on there. But Caesar, at least after Julius Caesar, Caesar and God, you had that sort of pharaonic almost ideal there, right? Caesar naming himself a god. So, and then that carried on past him, that every Caesar after that was like, oh, I'm definitely an embodiment of the Godhead, for sure. So it's like, you're sinning against God. You're sinning against God to try to have your own money.
That's interesting, because I ran across this while I was doing my show prep. So the Confederate States of America actually issued their own money.
Did they?
They did. And featured on some of the notes was Juno Moneta, sitting atop like treasure chests with one of them held open and like something like a pad of paper or something in her left hand. And I'm like, well, why would they put her on their money?
Because they went back to the original. See, this is the thing that people, I think, in our day and age, we have regressed. We're in dark ages. I'm telling you. And like I've said before, we're entering into a new age of magic. But you'll notice that all of the magic stuff always happens in ages of ignorance. So it's like, there's not a lot of magic stuff going on during the Roman Empire. You notice that? There's not a lot of this there's not magical things set during the Roman Empire. When is the magical stuff set? During the Dark Ages, the medieval time, right? That's when you've got the wizards and the warlocks, and it's like, where were the wizards in the Roman time? No, they weren't there. Why? Because it was not a state of ignorance. You got to get into a state of ignorance to get into a state of magic, where people around there has to be things working that people don't understand how they work. That's how you get into an age of magic. And I believe that we're in an age of magic. See, but when you go back and you look at early American history, particularly by the time that so there was definitely an age of magic in this exact area in certainly the 1600s, when you had like the Salem witch trials and all of that. There was an age of magic. By the time you get to the founding fathers, that is not an age of magic. That is an age of reason.
Yes.
Pure, unadulterated reason. And it carries through. I mean, Thomas Jefferson had like the largest library in the world, they said, in terms of the number of books that he had, how well read he was. At the time of the American Revolution, the literacy rate in the United States among free people was something like 95%.
Wow.
No public schools, by the way. No public schools. 1776, 95% literacy. Top selling book, Thomas Paine's Common Sense.
Wow.
There were so many copies in the colonies of that book that there was something like one copy of Common Sense for every 12 people in the colonies.
That's crazy. I mean, I had no idea.
So you think about how educated the society was that the American, at least from a political standpoint, that the American experience happened inside of. And that carried like that tradition, and that like there wasn't the level of anti-intellectualism that we have today. It was intellectualism. So you figure the individuals who were, regardless of how the lens of history has seen the individuals who broke off from the Confederacy, regardless of whether you want to say, sure, they probably were racist. Sure. I mean, they're coming up in the situation of the antebellum South. Like, yeah, there's no question they're racist. They're also highly educated. Mm-hmm. At least the wealthiest individuals that you're talking about, like let's say a plantation owner, like you're talking about somebody who's in the ultra wealthy. These are some of the wealthiest people on earth, highly educated, have sent their children off to school in Europe or up in the north to Harvard, to whatnot, to come back. Yeah, you don't think that it was the top minds? These weren't just some brutes. This was the aristocracy of one of the wealthiest areas in the entire world who was breaking off. It's not surprising to me at all. That's a long way to get to. I mean, these are not uncultured. In other words, these are not uncultured people.
Sure, and I totally agree with your assessment of how they would have known, right, about Juno. But then, what does she represent on their money?
A return to a republic.
Ooh.
A recognition that, because that's what the entire breaking away of the Confederacy was, that it's like, no, this is not supposed to be that. You know, it was the continuation of, it was the culmination of a fight that began after the Revolution and before the Constitution was written. And you can literally read the fight in the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. That was a fight that was already going on. This was a debate about what is this thing that we're creating supposed to be? Is this United States? Are these a bunch of states that are united to like individual states? Or is this one giant federal, is this a confederation?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we confederated? Or is there a federal government? Like, this is trying to fight the battle that now, the European states are trying to, or the individuals within the Eurozone are trying to fight. It's already been fought. I think it's a human. It's two sides of a view of a state. Orwell in the sort of the book within the book in 1984. The theory and practice of oligarchical collectivism. Do I have that right? Collective oligarchy, theory and practice. I believe that's the book within the book, Emmanuel Goldstein's book within the book. That at the beginning of each of the 2 chapters of the 3 that Winston reads, he says that there's this idea that there is the high, the middle, and the low. And that the middle is always trying to play the low because they want to switch places with the high. So it's always the high trying to switch places. And that's, these are just the games to play. But I think it brings up a good point, dude, about the fact that here they did what was one of the most important things that they could do: mint their own money.
Yeah, absolutely. And, through the history of money, right? Let's take a look at the evolution, like you were talking about. So we started with trade and barter, right? I mean, that's been going on since the beginning of civilization. I've got a dozen chickens and you've got a goat. Let's trade. We moved beyond that to commodity money. So commodity money, meaning money that has intrinsic value, like gold coins, silver coins, things that actually have some worth independent of whether or not it's a coin.
Mm-hmm.
So representative money came after that. And there was overlap, obviously, between these two, but representative money doesn't have any intrinsic value, but it represents an amount of something that has intrinsic value. So if you think about gold certificates or
Bitcoin,
well, sure, or the original pound sterling,
sure,
So I mean, you could literally turn it in and get a pound of silver, same thing. So that was representative money. Now we've gone on to fiat money.
Mm-hmm.
And fiat money really only has value just because of government decree. I mean, that's the only thing that gives it value. And then the question is, what is the government actually promising? So it's a promissory note, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is the government guaranteeing that? Well, they're guaranteeing it through their ability to enforce taxation on their subjects.
Mm-hmm.
So what the currency represents is the government's ability to confiscate the wealth of the people that live there.
So maybe, I said Bitcoin for commodity money, but it's clearly not that. It's clearly not the idea that, what is it? What was the one that's the exchange? Is that representative money? It's not representative money because it doesn't actually represent anything. It's not fiat.
Mm-hmm.
So what would we call it? Because it is the next level.
It's almost a brand new thing.
It's not almost a brand new thing. It's definitely a brand new thing. There's no question about that.
Well, even from a conceptual standpoint, there's no bucket to put it in.
No, that's what I'm talking about from a conceptual standpoint.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying there's nowhere we can put it.
I think that's why the Keynesian economists, that's why the people who are within the central banks have such a difficult time. I was hosting Free Talk Live a couple days ago, and Ian Freeman was reading this article that Paul Krugman, he's so bad, had written in the New York Times, this opinion piece on Bitcoin, and he was just even getting the technology wrong. Like, his description was just wrong. It was just flat out wrong. And I was like, I think this guy probably just can't even, his mind is programmed in such a way that he could probably read everything on Bitcoin and it would just like not even, and I think that there's this it's a conceptual break.
Mm-hmm.
That it's almost like if you know too much, or if the mechanics of a particular economic system are too familiar to you, it's something that's new, you try to slide it into all these places that it doesn't even, I mean, it's almost like, it's like when cars would be introduced.
Mm-hmm.
If you're if you raise horses and it's like riding horses and all of this is your livelihood and it's all that you know, it's going to be very difficult for you to imagine, how are these automobiles going to work?
Didn't the government try to save like the horse crop industry or something? It was like
buggy whip industry or something?
Buggy whip, yeah, something like that. I thought I read a story about that.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Bailouts.
But I think that what Bitcoin is doing and why the whole Satoshi Nakamoto as Jesus thing is why that works for me, why that metaphor maps on for me, is that what it's really demonstrating is that all this time, money has really been completely conceptual. We've thought that, with the barter that we were actually trading something, or with the commodity money that, oh, there was actually, and people still, the people who are like the Peter Schiffs of the world, who are anti-Bitcoin and pro-gold, are still in that place, right? So you've got Krugman, who's like fiat. This new Bitcoin thing just can't fit into the space. Then you've got like the Peter Schiffs of the world, who just everything about gold their whole life, and Bitcoin, it's kind of got this piece over here, and it's kind of, but it doesn't fully fit, so it can't be, and it gets kind of like to the physicist thing, right? Mm-hmm. And when you've been a physicist for this long, and then this new idea comes along, you're like, it can't. But I think that the thing that it's really laying bare is it's laying bare, and the thing that these other individuals really have the most problem with is, was that you or me?
I don't know. I thought I turned my volume down.
I don't know. It's not me. Is that it was imaginary the whole time. The whole time it was imaginary. And I think that's really where that's where religion comes in, and that's the place that religion plays, and that's the crossover, is that it's like, really what we're talking about is we're talking about value systems, right? That's fundamentally what a religion is. And so, of course, religion has to concern itself with this sort of parallel human phenomenon of value. So here's religion trying to create a value system, a way for you to live. And then here's this parallel value system that seems to just be growing and evolving independent of the control of anybody. Because it really doesn't seem like the evolution of money is in control of anyone. It seems like everybody's following along in some way.
Well, I think, honestly, that there's a great deal of control involved. Because from a religious standpoint, religions have always wanted to control their adherents. And, from a monetary standpoint, if you control the supply of money by minting the coins and forbidding anybody else from minting coins, or, fiat currency or whatever it is that you're using, there's a tremendous amount of control there. So I think the control aspect applies to both religion and money. And I think that's why they overlap so much. Historically, going back and looking at, the temples, a lot of times were these storehouses of, goods, because they were more secure. Mm-hmm. And, it was like a centralized place where everybody would go. And you could actually take your things there and get a certificate of deposit back. And this occurred in, ancient Egypt, India, China. And it would actually be almost like a form of representative money, because you could then take your certificate of deposit that you deposited, 10 pounds of copper or whatever it was, and you could then take it and trade it to somebody else.
Right.
For whatever they had.
It's a bill of exchange.
Basically, yeah. And if, whoever possessed the certificate, they could go back to the temple and they could pick up their goods.
Now, this was how the Knights Templar made their money, wasn't it? That they were kind of like, not Western Union, but they were kind of like bank branches, right?
They invented banking.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, these guys were phenomenally ahead of their time. Also a religious order, Catholic, military, monastic type order. And they were intended to provide safe passage for pilgrims, religious pilgrims that were trying to make the journey to the Holy Land. And, so in the execution of that service, they're like, hey, these pilgrims are traveling a lot of times with a lot of cash. Tell you what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have you leave your cash with us here at this fort, and then we're going to give you a slip of paper. And then when you get to the destination in Jerusalem or wherever it is that you're going, because we're going to escort you there, we'll pick up your, an equivalent value like gold or whatever it is that they had, right? And this was literally the first time where we had a banking system. These guys had a huge network. I mean, it was like almost 1,000 commanderies and fortifications across Europe and the Holy Land. So, I mean, you're talking about, if there was such a thing as a corporation at the time, the first multinational corporation.
Right. Well, the word company was created by the people who came back from the Crusades. The first time that the word company was used was in Italy after the Crusades, and it was the mercenaries who were the people who had come back off the Crusades, who were then became mercenaries for the little merchant states of Italy that would kind of war against each other, the traders of Venice, as it were. And that's where it came from, because it's a military company, like a company of men, the military term, and that was where we get the term company that we now use for everything. Was from that. So it's like
nice.
These so much of the capitalist model was born in trying to figure out how do you move goods and people during the Crusades. And interesting, I've always thought about that like, wow, what a great business model when you know that you have some percentage of pilgrims who are going to die either in attacks, disease, accidents, whatever it is, on their journey to the Holy Land, and are never able to withdraw what they've deposited. You just get to keep that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they had that written into the contract, you know. I would. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they became one of the wealthiest and most powerful organizations in the world at that time, to the extent where they actually had world leaders indebted to them. And that was actually the source of their eventual downfall.
Demise, yeah.
Because Philip IV of France was so indebted to them, he had no hope of paying them back. He's like, I'm screwed. What do I do? And he thought, well, I'll kill them all. And so he conspired with Pope Clement V, and they actually had all of the Templars imprisoned. Well, not all of them. A lot of them. Imprisoned, tortured, burned at the stake, and then disbanded the organization.
So this is one of the interesting historical ironies, I think, and appropriate, that the Knights Templar, which it's Solomon's temple, isn't it? It's the temple in Jerusalem that they're talking about. And that these are money changers. That's what they did. They were money changers.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the whole idea of the money changer is to exchange one currency for another, and that's exactly what they were doing.
That's what they were doing. But they're Christians.
Yeah.
But so what we both had here, I think, is the perfect segue to go into, because I started mine with the story of the money changers.
Awesome.
Which is, so there are basically two stories that are, so this is called the cleansing of the temple.
Yes.
Right? So there are two stories.
It's a great story.
Yes, that are crucial stories of Jesus, that are specifically about economics, specifically about his stance and behavior in the sort of financial world of his time. Interesting about these two stories, the money changer story appears in all four Gospels.
That's rare, actually.
It's super rare.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, when you see a story that appears in multiple Gospels, that's to take note. When you see a story that appears in all four Gospels, that pretty much means that that's one of the most fundamental stories of Christianity. Then you have the second story, which is also important. It's only in 3 of the Gospels, render unto Caesar. But what's interesting about that particular story, it's true to a certain degree of the money changers as well, but what is interesting about render unto Caesar is how almost exact the 3 stories are.
Yeah.
These are ones that it seems, okay, as this traveled through the early Christian world, these were the stories that people were like, no, you don't get any artistic license with this one. Like, this is the way that you got to tell it. And for me, as I've looked into the life of this guy, and this is why I say Satoshi Nakamoto is Jesus Christ, I believe that these are the 2 things that he was killed for. I don't believe it was anything else. I believe these were, because you think, man, what would in a historical context, like what would rise to the level that would get this? What did this dude do? It's not the Sermon on the Mount. It's not the loaves and the fishes walking on water. It's none of that. I don't even think it's the, the King of the Jews thing makes sense when it's in the context of these two stories, right? So I've got the two stories. My favorite money changers is John. I think the Gospel of John, it seems to be to me, it's the most exciting from a literary standpoint. It's the most creative by far. It's got the Last Supper with him washing the feet. It's certainly the most intimate of the Gospels, right? Like it's the one that's a lot less about like who, what, when, where.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more about like Jesus the man.
Yep.
Now, whether that means, I think that there's some things here in the Money Changer story to where it's like, I think that what that necessarily means is that the author was just more talented. I don't think it necessarily means that the author was there, but I think that the author was a little more talented in terms of getting more depth in the storytelling.
Yes.
So I'm gonna just do the John King James version of the Money Changers.
Let's do it.
So, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. So, by the way, with John, different than with the other Gospels, this happens right at the beginning of the Gospel. This is like pretty much the first. This is John chapter 2.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And
so, one important note about that.
Yes, go.
So, the Jews coming for Passover would have been 300 to 400,000 of them. It was packed.
Right.
Huge crowd.
Now, also no, and we'll talk about this one after. We'll talk about this one after. Okay. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, a whip, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables, and said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise.
Why was he so pissed at the dove guys?
I will tell you.
Oh, good.
I know the answer to this.
Nice.
So, yeah, so people are like, what is the deal with found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves? Why are people selling animals in the temple? I think very few people, like that's something to question. And the first time that the best explanation of this, and it is so brilliant, and this dude is such a great author in this regard, but he literally lays it out at the beginning of the book Zealot, Reza Aslan. 2 books that are like, I think, must-reads. Reza Aslan, they're 2 books, Zealot, which is the story of basically Jesus, and No God But God, which is Islam. Now, Reza Aslan is Iranian, and he's Muslim, or he was, I guess, raised Muslim, but he's a professor of comparative religion and religious studies and history. But what he does in both of these books is he tells the story of these religions. Particularly with Zealot, he's telling the story of Jesus. It's like it's after he did No God But God. But what he's doing is he's laying out a picture of what the world looked like at the time, what the culture was, what the social norms were, all of these things, that then when you understand what all of those are, then you understand what's happening in the Bible and what all of this would mean to somebody at the time. Because at the time, somebody who's hearing this story is hearing it, like as we talked about before, 300 years would pass, but the traditions would be the same 300 years later. It's not like now.
Right.
Somebody living 300, 400, 500 years later would still be reading this and be able to interpret it as like it was modern day. So what did they do? So the Temple of Solomon, the Jewish temple at the time, the tradition was that the temple was built in these sort of concentric circles. Mm-hmm. All right.
Well, this was the remodel, right? I mean, this is Herod's temple.
Yes, this is Herod's temple.
Yep.
This is the remodel. They've got concentric circles. The very center is the Holy of Holies, where supposedly the Ark of the Covenant was, that only the high priest could go into this area. So then you had these circles going out, these sort of circular gardens. So out from that would be where only priests could go. Mm-hmm. And then out from that would be where only sort of the aristocracy, the highest class could go. And then out from that you had where like the hoi polloi would be able to go. And so what you would do is the system that they had figured out, which is pretty good, is that any outside money that you would bring, and so in this case it would be Roman money, or it may be some money from somewhere else. One of the other could be Egyptian, could be from the Assyrians, could be from some of these places, could just be straight up gold, silver. All of that is unclean money.
Yes,
that's unclean. You cannot bring that into the temple. So what you would do during this Passover celebration is what the tradition was this was the time when you would sacrifice an animal. Mm-hmm. And you would want the priest to sacrifice an animal on your behalf to God, and that would deliver to you a mitzvah, that would deliver to you a blessing for the year.
Can you imagine this scene though? 400,000 pilgrims coming to this place for Passover, mm-hmm. buying animals, having them slaughtered. I mean, it must have been just a bloodbath.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I as I understand it, some of this meat was given away as charity, that was part of it as well. So like that the meat was, so during this time, in many ways, the community was fed. It's not like they just left it out there, right? So there was, they were smart about it. So it was like the people were fed. This was Passover. That's the whole sort of idea, right? And look, the whole Jesus story in Jerusalem is basically taking place during this time. That's the idea, that it's a very short time period that this dude winds up there, does his thing, and then gets killed in this very, very, very short time.
It's period. Like a week, right?
It's like a week.
Yeah,
it's a week. It's a week of a celebration, and he's going and he's showing who he is. He's going in there and he's like gonna wreck shop. So basically,
I have an awesome conspiracy theory for later on.
Okay,
we'll come back to it.
Okay, so the tradition is that you're going to sacrifice these things. Now, clearly so what do we got? We've got oxen, we've got sheep, and we've got doves.
Yeah.
So basically, the oxen and sheep, we've got these concentric circles again. The oxen, very expensive.
Yep.
The sheep, less expensive. Middle class. But at least if you were poor, that you would travel on this pilgrimage for the Passover, and you would at least a dove.
Yeah.
At least a dove, right? And maybe 2 or 3 of you go in on a dove together if you're particularly poor. So what you would have to do is you would go in with your dirty money, mm-hmm. and then the first people that you would encounter would be the money changers. And they would change out your money for temple money, the temple shekels. Because you couldn't buy one of these blessed animals, because, see, they had already been blessed. All of these animals were further in. They had been chosen, and it was a very special thing that only certain merchants who had a certain deal with the temple priests would be able to sell animals there. Like that was you'd have to have a franchise, right? A special guy, and these are blessed animals. You can't just bring any animal because those animals aren't clean.
They are, yeah. I'm not taking that to God.
Outside animals aren't clean. These are only the finest animals, and they're inside and they're clean and they've been blessed, and the only way that you can get one is I'm going to need your temple shekels. I'm going to need some temple shekels for that. I can't take dirty money because that will dirty the sacrifice. So you come in, you exchange for the temple shekels. So you're getting a token. Mm-hmm. You're getting temple tokens, right? This is going right back to what's happening with cryptocurrency. This is ICO right here.
Does this have anything to do with the whole graven image thing? Like you can't bring, images of, Caesar or whoever into the temple because of graven image?
I mean, I'm sure that was probably a rationale, but it's really a racket.
Oh, sure, it's total racket.
But I'm sure that there was a rationale about graven images and the whole thing. But fundamentally what it is that you've got to exchange out whatever it is that you have. And obviously there's a different exchange rate.
Oh, sure.
And clearly there's going to be a premium. I mean, there's no way that a blessed sheep inside the temple can be had for anything close to what your sheep outside would have, which reminds me a lot of Vegas bottle service, which is exactly why I created Baby Vodka, was the idea that it's like you would go out to the club,
Yep.
and you would get a table. And the thing is, again, Vegas clubs, weirdly enough, are built in these same concentric circles.
Oh, they are.
That you've got the DJ.
I never thought about that.
You've got the DJ, the Holy of Holies, in the middle.
That's awesome.
And then you have dance floor tables, which are the closest ones to the DJ. And then the tables get steadily less expensive as you get back to the back.
Yeah.
Vegas,
awesome.
Vegas clubs are built exactly like this.
I never thought about that. That is so cool.
Yeah. And so, but you go in and you get bottle service, and it's like literally the exact same bottle of Grey Goose that you can go to the liquor store and buy for $30 is going to be $1,000. And here's the thing. The closer that you are to the DJ, so like for somebody like me, I could go in and get a comp table because I knew the hosts or whatever. I could get a cheap bottle, right? I could get a bottle for $200 of Grey Goose, and a comp table. But that comp table is not going to be right on the I'm not going to get a dance floor table because the people there have actually paid a premium for the Grey Goose. They paid a premium for the table because they had a table minimum. Right? Like a $50,000 table minimum. It's like, we're going to run $50,000 on your card right now?
Wait, what?
Oh, absolutely.
I have obviously never been to these clubs.
Absolutely, yes. So for like, if there's something that's a big event or a big DJ or I mean, forget it. If it's New Year's, the same club that you might get a table and it might be like on a Wednesday a $10,000 minimum. On New Year's, it's going to be like $250,000.
Oh my God.
And so
that's a whole new level, dude.
But this is what I'm saying is that it's the same concept.
Oh yeah, it's Passover. That's an expensive sheep.
And the idea is that this is a social construct and that part of it is conspicuous consumption. It's the fact that somebody sees you walk over and you get give me 3 oxen.
Yeah.
And the thing about them is that they're going to just be sacrificed.
Yep.
The most important part about this is that you are basically wasting your money. That's the most important thing here, is for you to show what I would say is, it's not even loyalty. It's for you to show and to, the word is reify, for you to make this temple real in terms of value. It's just like you making the club value real. Because when those lights come on and nobody's in there, I've been in most of these clubs when the lights are on and I'm just hanging out with somebody, went to go meet somebody for a meeting or something. There's nothing special.
No.
The floors look like crap. The seats are ripped.
It's the music. It's the vibe. It's the energy.
Well, when it's dark and you can't see it and there's go-go's and there's a light show and they've got all the sound is up and doing all of that and there's all these other people, it's the social proof of what's happening. That's what gives it value. And I think that's where the money comes in, that it's like, no, that's all that money has ever been for. And Jesus goes in and blows that apart.
Yeah. Well, I think another part of it too is, the guy with the 3 oxen, he's trying to buy his way into heaven. He's like, hey, look at all this money I'm going to spend. I'm going to buy 3 oxen. Look at me. I'm a big shot. And, God will like me because I'm doing this, right?
But is it God that he wants to like him, or is it the people around him that
I think
he
it's
wants
both.
to like him?
I think in his mind it would be both, because, obviously he wants to impress the people around him. He wants to feel better than everybody else, but he wants to be, a good Jew while doing it.
But doesn't that perhaps indicate that God actually is the people around you? Because what determines whether or not you're a good Jew is really your society. I mean, that's a cultural construct anyway.
Totally.
The good Jew.
Yep.
And that's measured and
it
judged
could be
by the
good
people
Jew,
around.
good Christian,
whatever.
whatever. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that there's a system going on there with that money changing, with the blessed animals, the clean animals, then this clean money that they've minted in the temple, that the Romans are letting them do, by the way. The Romans are letting them run this racket.
Why not?
But, well, why not? That's so interesting to me. It's so interesting to me that, well, you certainly couldn't, well, here's why it's interesting. It's interesting because the second story, render unto Caesar. If you wanted, go ahead.
No, before we go there, back to the doves.
Let's do it.
So the whole thing was you had the oxen for the rich people, you had the sheep for the middle class, and you had the doves for the poor. Most of your super poor that were going to be buying the doves were your widows and orphans. And that pissed Jesus off. And he opened up a stone cold can of whoop ass because he was mad. He was mad that the poor were being exploited.
So this is a populist story here. This is there is definitely economics at play.
Absolutely.
Here, this is about you can't buy your way into heaven.
It's simony. It's a form of simony, right? Because these people were saying, I'll buy more stuff. God will like me more. The poor people weren't able to buy anything, so they literally would give every penny they had.
Right.
And, it was percentage-wise a much larger purchase for them.
It's a regressive tax.
Yeah, so, the rich guy buys the 3 oxen, he's still
Means
rich.
nothing, right.
The poor person buys the 1 dove,
right.
And that's literally all they have. Like they can't eat for 2 weeks now.
See, now what's interesting in this case is that this is very much a similar argument of what pissed off Martin Luther and what caused Protestantism to exist, was that the church was selling indulgences.
Oh.
Right? That's his main problem in the 95 Theses. That's really what pissed him off, was that the church, to raise money, were selling get-out-of-purgatory free cards to the wealthiest individuals and the monarchs of Europe.
How is that not simony? I mean, I don't get it. That is, like selling religious favors and religious benefits for money is simony.
Well, explain simony here. I don't really know simony.
Okay, so simony is actually named after the guy who did it first, Simon Magus. So he actually went up to 2 of Jesus's disciples, and Peter and John, and he said, look, I will give you guys money. I got money. I'm rich. I'm going to give you a lot of money if you give me the power to impart the power of the Holy Spirit onto anyone on who I put my hands. And they're like, no, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Did they even have the ability to do that?
It's not clear from the story. I mean, it's like, I'm sure he thought they might. There were a lot of miracles and magical things happening around that time. So maybe he thought, hey, guys, I want to learn how to do magic like you guys do. I want to heal people and, do stuff. And, I'll pay you to do it. And, they told him to fuck off. So that practice of getting religious favors and religious, services or whatever for money, like you can't buy your way into heaven. That was kind of the whole point. And, Jesus was, he was fairly consistent in teaching that it's not about the money. It is all about, there's no personal effort that can land you in heaven. And if you, look at money as just what you exchange, something of value that you exchange for something else. I mean, literally that could be labor, that could be anything. So if you look at Jesus' message, he's saying there's nothing you can do. Literally, you just ask for forgiveness and hope for the best. And, that's where you're at. You can't buy your way in.
Well, see, this is the idea of like grace.
Yeah.
Right. This is that there's no real work that you can do. It's just like you just go by. It's the grace of God that gets you into heaven, and the rest of it is, that was sort of the puritanical view, that it's like, look, you're not doing this work. The idea is not that you do the work to get into heaven. The idea is that you worship God and you thank God for bestowing grace upon you that you might get into heaven. But the work is for you. It's for the betterment of you as a human being.
Yeah.
And that being honest and forthright and doing for your community, no, that's for you to do as a good man or woman or child. Like, don't think that's not going to get you into heaven.
God don't care.
God does not care. Does not care. So we've got Jesus in this situation.
Yes.
Overturning the money changers table. Mm-hmm. We've got the connection there with Martin Luther,
yep,
who also is upset about this type of thing. An interesting connection with Muhammad as well.
Okay.
Because the reason that he was basically chased out of Mecca, there's a money connection with Muhammad too.
We touched on that briefly last time.
So he was the second husband of the wealthiest woman in Mecca, Khadijah. He met her because she chose him. He was kind of well known as being an honest dealer, good guy, forthright, truthful, hard worker. She chose him I think she was about 20 years older than him. She chose him to lead her caravans.
What, no cougar jokes? Come on.
Well, fair enough. And so I guess he killed it. Like, he was just this dope caravan leader. Like, he was really good. And they sort of sparked up a relationship. She actually ended up being like sort of the first follower of his after he had gone and had the revelations in a cave and almost went crazy. It was like her that sort of brought him back. But what was going on that was so interesting in Mecca at the time was the Quraysh, who were the tribe there that she was actually a part of. They had created this basically like a festival city. So we're back at this sort of story of this Passover festival and jacking up the religious festival and the money that's generated, right? Yep. So it's almost like now I would say that would be like the Super Bowl, like messing up the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So basically what it was in Mecca at the time was
only with more people.
Yeah. Right? They had the Kaaba. They had it even at that time. The black cube, it was there. But inside of it was every single icon of every single tribe. So it was basically like, they were like, we are the festival town. Do you have a particular god? You have a particular god? Does he have a particular day that everybody is supposed to make a pilgrimage and celebrate? Yes. We've got rooms. We've got food. We've got a great place in the middle of town for you to celebrate your god. And we love all the gods. Like, we love them all.
Wow. Okay.
And that was how they made their money. That was how the Quraysh became powerful, and they were traders, and it was like, man, now we don't have to take our caravans out. We'll bring the people to us. It was very much the Vegas of Arabia.
That is a great business model.
It's a great business model, yeah. Right? And they were in like a shitty area that wasn't on a trade route, like none of this. And yet everybody came there. And so clearly you could see Muhammad having this vision of there's one God, all these other people are idolaters. He's married to the wealthiest woman in Mecca. She's got mad street cred, lots of people around her, a huge family. She becomes his follower. She buys into this. All of a sudden, it's spreading. It's spreading. And the undertone is, yeah, we need to not let these other idol-worshipping pagans come in and worship in our town anymore. And the Quraysh were like, whoa, this dude is overturning the money changers' tables. And they were trying to kill him, and they basically snuck out of Mecca to Medina. At the time was called Yathrib, which was just a bunch of Jewish Arab tribes, and he basically found a gig with them as their sort of arbiter. So these tribes, they had this. They still have this. The nomadic tribes, like the Bedouin and whatnot, they have this arbitration system between tribes where they choose kind of a third-party arbiter to decide, this guy did this to me, this guy did this to me, to stop tribal warfare from happening.
Wow.
And so they were like, yeah, this Muhammad guy, we've heard good things about him. He's like, his wife is like very well known. He's a member of the Quraysh, and so he sort of went out there and then formed the first the first mosque, the masjid. That was his home, and that's what he did. He just mediated between these tribes until they came to rely on him, and all these. They basically bred out the other tribes that were there, all these pilgrims that were coming to him. But so he had the steady work from them, and then he built out his little empire. And then he eventually went back and took over Mecca. That's his story. It's the same thing. It's the Money Changers table.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's so many similarities. That's crazy. And, given the fact that Jesus was actually married, even more similar.
Go on. Go on.
I think we should do a whole show on that.
Okay. So we'll keep that as one.
We'll put it on the list. Alternative Jesus theories. So I wanted to take one quick branch.
Let's go.
Before we come back to
this
the second.
This is destination unknown, after all.
It is.
You never know.
We have no idea. And our compass just spins like we're in the Bermuda Triangle all the time. It's awesome.
Yep.
So Jeremiah 7:9. Are you to steal and murder, commit adultery and perjury? And this is the important part. Burn incense to Baal, Baal. You're familiar with
That's a Sumerian god?
Multiple mythologies.
Assyrian as well, I believe.
Yeah. So there's more, but the point is he was pissed off about them, burning incense to Baal. So let's take a look at who Baal was. So Baal the name appears in several different mythologies at the time. He was a son of El. The son of El. And we've talked about this on the show before. El, meaning God, appears in Elohim, Elohai, El Shaddai, Israel. All of the L's means God. So
also continued on in Allah.
Yes, Allah as well.
And El in Spanish, which comes from the Moors, meaning the El. So, yeah.
Yes. So interestingly enough, right, so you have El, who is like the father god, and then you have his son Baal, who they were pissed off about them burning incense to. And depending on the context, the name El itself could also apply to Baal Hadad, Moloch, or Yahweh. All three were referred to at different points as El. So my contention is that you can draw parallels between all of these. So like Yahweh, in my mind, is in many ways similar to Baal Hadad. Baal was a synonym for Adon, as in Adonai. Right? Baal Berith means Lord of the Covenant. In Isaiah 27:1, Yahweh is prophesied to battle Leviathan the serpent. However, slaying the serpent is a deed attributed to Baal Hadad, who is the son of El. So in Christian mythology, we have Yahweh, who's going to battle Leviathan. In other regional mythologies, we have this Baal Hadad, who's supposed to be fighting the serpent. And then we have Moloch, right? So in biblical Hebrew, they only wrote the consonants. And I'm sure you've seen this. Like
MLK, so it's MLK. Molk.
Exactly what it is. MLK. So for most of the Bible, MLK, which I think is like Martin Luther King. I mean, every time I see the letters, it just, pops into my head. But in most of the Bible, when you look at the Hebrew, MLK stands for Melech, which means king.
Melech, yeah, Melech.
Yep. In this,
like Malachi.
Yeah,
Malachi is.
It's almost like it's like an epithet, right? It's like you put it before somebody's name or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So Melech which means king, in the same way that Baal means Lord, and is also, Melech is applied to the name Yahweh. So in Hebrew, both Melech, meaning king, and Molech, meaning,
the same.
They're identical. MLK. So the difference between the two names isn't a hard and fast fact. It is an interpretation by the people that did the translation.
That translated it to, King James was from Greek, right? So that the people who translated it from Hebrew to Greek then?
Yeah, because they had to fill in the vowels and they had to make assumptions. And when the narrative, when you have the opportunity to craft a narrative in a certain way, and you have these words where you're missing all the vowels, and you can, hey, okay, well, in this sentence, MLK is going to be Melech the king, referring to Yahweh, but in this other sentence, it looks like this MLK guy is doing something bad, so we're going to call him Molech, so he's different.
See, that's so interesting. I mean, and still you have the very biblical Jewish name of Malachi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's got Moloch right in it, or Malach right in it, or Melech. Malach, Melech, Moloch, they're all the same thing in Hebrew letters.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the name sense, it should mean king.
It does. Well, it does. Malachi is king.
Yeah. But Molech was supposedly this evil, demon person. But, obviously I think that you've got Baal, you've got El, you've got Yahweh, you've got Molech. I think they're all very, very related. And the reason is because the symbol that's used for El, for Baal, for Moloch was the bull. The reason that ties in here is, how do we describe somebody who's super optimistic about financial markets?
Oh, a bull. It's a bull market.
It's a bull market.
It's a Moloch market.
It is. They're bullish. It's a bull market.
They're like Moloch. So, but it's, in many ways, it's also a blessed market.
Indeed.
Right, so
it's a positive thing. When the market grows, everybody's doing good. It's a positive thing.
So,
right?
Are we perhaps saying that bull statue on Wall Street is really meant to represent Moloch? It's really
but Moloch is also the same as Yahweh, the same as Baal, the same as El, who was the father of all gods.
So it's a hoping for a blessing in a way.
Yeah. I think it's, honestly, I think that, the people who translated and edited the Bible got a lot of things wrong, to tell you the truth. And, this is one of those things that just doesn't make sense, right? When you look at the comparative mythologies of the time, of the region, why would we have this bull god, basically, who's positive in all these other religions, but now, all of a sudden, because of Christianity and the way they do things, now it has to be negative, and the name, carried over in the sense of being connected with money and success and prosperity. And, I think that kind of gives you the thread to, pull through all these little bits of information.
The question becomes, and I think that this is true, certainly when you look at, with Islam, you've got, this is created by a wealthy individual. There's no question. This religion is coming from wealth. It's well financially backed. Martin Luther was not from a humble background, and we can clearly see that he had deep ties into the aristocracy, because the German noblemen kept him safe when there was a price on his head from the Catholic Church. And that's why Protestantism, Lutheranism, which then spread out into all the rest, was able to take shape. We see this. I mean, look, Marxism is a religion. I've said that many, many times. And it's a perhaps secular religion, but Marx himself was, both of his grandfathers were very, very illustrious and well-known rabbis. So this is a guy who was steeped in the religious tradition, steeped in it. So It's not somebody just coming out of the woodwork, and it's clearly all about money. Again, like thinking about money, thinking about, and also trying to, what I see in all of these is trying to recraft. I see all of these individuals making a populist statement, right? So whether it's from Jesus, whether it's from Muhammad, whether it's from Luther, whether it's from Marx, you go down the line, and I feel like every religious leader that gets some grasp, you almost have to go against the concept of money as it stands in the establishment in order for it to take root. It's almost like at the point when the concept of money gets corrupt, that's when we are ripe for some new. It's almost like you can't even call it a religious paradigm, right? Because it's like when you look at Jesus, and we haven't even gotten into Render Unto Caesar, which by the way is the title of my next book.
Nice.
Right? Because it's about a lot of these concepts. But
this is a good segue.
Okay, go ahead.
No. What you're about to say is a good segue.
What I'm saying is that I almost have a feeling that the establishment of a religion is the establishment, because it's an establishment of a new value order, is and of itself necessarily the establishment of a new money.
Which leads right in, if you're going the same place I'm going with this Render Unto Caesar,
take it.
We're going to end up in the same place.
Take it.
Because that was a fantastic segue. Was Jesus an anarchist? I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah.
This Render Unto Caesar is definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not the only ones. So what happened? So Jesus was hanging out, and these argumentative types came up and started causing trouble in his neighborhood.
Now it's said in these three Gospels that these were plants. I
totally believe that, yeah.
That they were purposely so. Matthew says, then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And then Mark says, and they send unto him certain of the Pharisees and of the Herodians to catch him in his words.
Yes.
And Luke says, and they watched him and sent forth spies, which should feign themselves just men, that they may take hold of his words, so that they might deliver him unto the power and authority of the governor.
Right, because saying the wrong thing could get you executed.
Mm-hmm. So this is an intel op.
Oh, yeah. They were setting him up from the beginning.
Yeah, so they're launching. I mean, these are three Gospels that are these are the three Gospels it's mentioned in. All of them, to start the story out, are like, this was a setup, just so you know.
Yep.
This
Total
was
setup.
a setup.
Yep. Yeah, it's I don't know if you have the exact wording there.
I've got the verse. I've got the King James verses.
Go ahead. I didn't actually write down the verse. I just wrote down the my notes about the verse.
Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll do Matthew. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true, and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar, or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness, and said, Why tempt you me, you hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he saith unto them, Whose is this image and superscription? They say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. When they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. Now, what's interesting is the last words of, so that's Matthew. The last words of Mark is, and Jesus answering said unto them, Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. And the last words of Luke are, And they could not take hold. I love how the Luke one is. And they could not take hold of his words before the people, and they marveled at his answer and held their peace. Like, gotcha, bitch.
Well, he spoke slicker than a politician.
Yeah.
I mean, his answer was just awesome, to the point where Mohandas K. Gandhi himself is a huge fan. So Gandhi says Jesus evaded the direct question put to him because it was a trap. Mm-hmm. He was in no way bound to answer it. He therefore asked to see the coin for taxes and said with withering scorn, "How can you, who traffic in Caesar's coins and thus receive what to you are benefits of Caesar's rule, refuse to pay taxes?" So Jesus' whole preaching and practice point unmistakably to non-cooperation, which necessarily includes non-payment of taxes. So Jesus, not a fan of the government. But yeah, I mean, he's basically calling them out and saying, you guys are full of crap. I mean, you come to me with this story, but yet you've got his money in your pocket. And, you're saying like, if you're literally walking around with his money in your pocket and you're taking advantage of Caesar's roads, why are you coming to me and saying, you want me to advise you not to pay taxes? What are you, idiots?
Well, see, but there's also, when you look at it in the context of the money changers table, it gets even more interesting, right? And it gets interesting because when he's like, show me what you're talking about that I should give to Caesar. Show me what I should give to Caesar. They don't pull out a temple shekel.
No, were they in the temple at that point?
No, they're outside of the temple.
Okay.
They don't pull out a temple shekel. And I think that's why he fucks them up. Why he fucks them up is that it's almost like, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, right? Like, why are you even coming at me? Because remember, and this is why I tend to believe John's chronology. Mm-hmm. I tend to believe John's chronology that, see, he had already pulled this stunt at the temple where he had kicked over the money changers' tables. And now they're like, let's do something. Because, maybe we can't put him to death for that. Right? Because, maybe the Romans don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about our money changers' table. They think it's a racket. They think it's a joke. The centurions who were probably guarding and standing around were probably laughing.
Probably.
Right? They probably thought that, because you would have had centurions guarding, no doubt.
Well, they would have been around,
They would have been around.
Because Rome's whole attitude was, as long as they're not bothering anybody, let them do what they want.
Well, and it's their own personal, he's not doing anything to us.
Yeah.
We're not, why would we get involved with that and possibly have an uprising? They've already got uprisings happening all over Judea. Right? They already know that it's look. They know about the mob and the crowds. They're vastly outnumbered. Mm-hmm. And it's look, let them, this is a Jew dispute.
Yeah.
This is not a Rome dispute. This is a Jew dispute. And you see that with Pontius Pilate in the later, when he's like, I don't even, what do you want? You guys want me to kill him? There's nothing. This is not our fight. This is not about us. He hasn't broken Roman law. So in this regard, they're like, we need to figure out some way that he needs to break Roman law. Mm-hmm. He needs to break Roman law. In other words, he needs to, you know what? He's enough of a rabble rouser that he'll tell them not to pay taxes. But he doesn't.
Yep.
He doesn't. He's like, how do you earn your money?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do you earn Roman money? Well, then, pay to Rome. Because you notice what he doesn't do is he doesn't pull out any of his money.
No.
He doesn't pull out money. He says, well, show me the money that you're talking about. What money are you talking about? And they're like, oh, this Roman money. And he's like, no. Okay, give that to Caesar. That's cool.
Yeah.
Render unto God that which is God's. Which is why I find it so perfect for the discussion of Bitcoin, because it's whose face is on Bitcoin? It's not a government. What government do I pay the Bitcoin taxes to? Which government? Whose face is stamped onto it? Which government?
There's nothing.
There's no government, there's no name, there's no who even made this. I don't literally even know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. I know it's not Craig Wright, but I don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, except I know who it's not. So it's like, that's the perfect example of render unto Caesar. And I feel like that's why I say Satoshi Nakamoto is Jesus for this story of Jesus.
See, I was going to make a joke that Satoshi Nakamoto is actually you from the future, but you would have wrote better code.
Probably. There's a comment in the original code that I love, and it's in I'm forgetting which file it's in, but it's where the opcodes are defined. And it's funny because it's actually what I would have written, and it says, "This is why people hate C++." Oh. It's in the original code. It's a comment from Satoshi.
Nice. See, that's awesome.
He's that's like, awesome. But it's those, those are the things that throw me off in my AI, idea, that I'm like, well, if an AI did this, it certainly is behaving very, very human, But maybe that's the whole thing, is to throw somebody off, right?
But look at the AIs that have been, so science fiction is often a predictor of science, right? So, you look at the AIs that are created by humans, and they often have characteristics and traits of their human creators. So you created the AI that created Bitcoin.
I really didn't, because I have no desire to research research AI. However, one thing that I do find interesting. So Bitmain, the biggest Bitcoin miners, who actually, it turns out, they're holding like over 1 million Bitcoin Cash. They traded out all their BTC for Bitcoin Cash. Jihan Wu is the head of Bitmain, I got a chance to meet him in Hong Kong. Great guy, super smart, obviously super smart businessman. They made, I want to get this right, $1.5 billion in profit in the first quarter of this year, first 3 months.
Wow.
In profit, not revenue, profit.
Wow.
And they are expecting $10 billion in revenue for the year. And they're going to do an IPO before the end of the year. It's going to be the biggest IPO of all times.
Oh, my God.
And what's interesting is that what they are branching out into is AI. Because they're a chip manufacturer as well. They manufacture the most popular mining hardware as well as they mine. But what they're branching out to is developing, they want to work on AI chips. So it's almost like, oh, is it the AI coming from
are they going to call it
future and then coming into the past?
Are they going to call it Skynet? What are they going to call it?
I just think it's really interesting that the biggest miners, the ones who have profited the most off of Satoshi's creation, that what they're looking to do is to work on AI. That's what they want to be doing, is working on AI. And I'm just like, damn. Because you saw the video. I was talking about Satoshi Nakamoto as an AI. What was it? It's been at least a year.
Yeah, it's a year plus. Yeah.
A year plus. It's time-stamped. It's there on YouTube. And the fact that now Bitmain is like, oh yeah, we're going to do AI. That's what we want to do.
Yep.
I think this might be just an example. It's why I wish that Terrence McKenna was still alive right now. I really do, because he would have so much to say about this. But I feel like the prophets always go soon. They always go before.
Yep.
Jobs is gone too.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what Jobs had to say about this right now.
Yeah.
I feel like he went just before Bitcoin. Just before it mattered,
right. Just before anybody really knew about it, and that's the thing is, like, we have these people who, Maybe that's not in range, is it? No, okay, we're
No,
good.
yeah.
All right, good deal. So it is odd how so many of the world's like most impactful people that are impactful at a young age, right, die so young.
Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, you could say they just, flare up and burn out like a meteor, but I don't know what it is. Very, very rarely do you have somebody who's just intellectually on fire and live into their 60s or 70s, like, Leonardo da Vinci. That guy, lived his entire life as an uber genius. And there aren't many people like that who live beyond their, 20s or 30s.
Although what I wonder is, I wonder if leaving this mortal coil at an early age is precisely what... So it's almost like when you look at somebody's life, you're going to look at the whole of their life. But most people's best creations are probably, certainly I'd say before 50 for most people, right? And then you just naturally slow down at a certain point, right? It's not true for everybody. There are certainly exceptions. There are certainly people that it's like from 40 to 70 is like the fucking sweet spot, right? There are a few super geniuses that's the point. But I think there's something to be said for the idea that, like, if you live longer, I just think that if you're ahead of your time, that eventually you're no longer ahead of your time, that eventually you're in the time, and then your ideas are not really all that special. But it's like, if there's no more ideas for you to come up with, then it's like, okay, this person was so ahead of their... And then you're compared against the time that you left. Because you're always compared against the time that you leave the earth.
Yeah.
So if you leave when you're 80, it's like maybe the best that you get is like, well, kind of predicted this and was one of the first people to do this, but by the time you died, everything had already passed beyond where you had gone in your prime. But if you die in your prime, then it's like, well, you have to be judged against the time when you left the earth.
Not only that, but people will judge you against what they assume you would have accomplished in the future.
Right, because they assume that you would have kept on doing more.
Yep. So it's like, oh my God, we lost Steve Jobs. Imagine what he could have done.
But he might not have done anything more.
Yeah.
I think this about Bob Marley. Right?
Okay.
That it's like, or Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
There's no reason to believe, especially the trajectory that Bob Marley was on. Like, he probably would have ended up president of Jamaica, and it would... seriously. Like, that's...
Wow.
I mean, he was...
I don't know a lot about this topic.
Dude.
So...
This guy, like, towards the end of his life... So, towards the end of his life, the two political parties in Jamaica were... They literally had, like, street gangs on the street shooting at each other.
Wow.
The two political parties. Like, it was gang warfare, but it was gangs that were, like, associated with the two political parties of Jamaica, the two main political parties, which, by the way, were both headed by white dudes, right? So it's like it was vying for power, and then it like went down, and the hierarchy went down into the thugs on the street. And like towards the end of his life, he had unified the country in such a way that there's a concert, one of his last concerts, where he actually brings the two sort of leaders of the two political parties up on stage together, has them shake hands. They would only do that for Bob, because he was at that time he was the most powerful individual in that country. He was their spiritual leader, he was their political leader, he was everything. So it's like he would have been the president of Jamaica, and then it all falls apart. Like, then he's not remembered for the music. Then he's remembered for what would have been failed policies, because Bob was like, I mean, he had multiple wives. He was all about women, and it's like it really wouldn't have worked. It's almost better that, I mean, he's the Jesus of Rastafarianism, you know, and the music was, he wasn't gonna be able to keep on with that for very, very long, not with the lifestyle that he was living. So it's like, but I feel like that it's like that with a lot of people who are very, very successful, but it's so strange that you get so many of these individuals who just gone so early.
Mm-hmm. Almost like it was planned that way.
Like in a simulation?
Yeah. That's so weird.
Well, look, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
You know, and the interesting thing about one of the interesting things is that at least two of the individuals who there's a good chance could have been Satoshi Nakamoto. Very good chance. Probably the two best chances. Both of those individuals, terrible degenerative diseases, and were dead like within a couple years. Were dead by the time that Satoshi, just right after the time that Satoshi vanished from the scene, basically died.
I mean, there's still no reason they couldn't have been, you know, an implant.
You're saying like an NPC?
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, most of the world is NPCs anyway. So we'll have our listeners think about that for a while.
The weird thing about that is most of the world actually are NPCs.
They are.
Most of the world actually are NPCs.
Right, whether you're talking about simulation theory or not.
Well, that's Plato's allegory of the cave.
Yeah.
I mean, until you're out of the cave, you're an NPC.
Yeah.
While you're strapped in the cave with the shackles behind you, watching the pictures go by on the wall, you're an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the whole goal of spiritual enlightenment, if there is a goal, is to not be an NPC.
Right. You want to be a player that matters.
Well, you want to be a player with some consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird part about it is, for better or worse, because I feel like in some ways there's the dark consciousness, or the dark independent consciousness that is like not an NPC, that is like maybe a bug that's like the Agent Smith. And I would say that that's the 1 to 3% of people who are psychopaths, who have because they have no empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just totally like, they're on their own path. They could give a shit, because I really feel like empathy is the tool. Empathy is the conduit through which programming can occur. Right? As we were talking about on the drive here, that it's the idea that empathy is what makes us desire to have some value to society. Empathy is what makes the guy decide, you know what? It's worth it to me to be in the temple, to buy that bull, to buy that ox. Yes, that's got value. Or, oh yes, that $20,000 table actually has value. And the fact that other people have empathy around is why that thing has value. But that psychopath who has no empathy is like, okay, that doesn't it. There's no value there. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. How could money be valuable without empathy?
Well, so to me, like, empathy to me really has more to do with things you don't have power over. You know, for example, like feeling bad that someone else feels bad.
Right.
You know, that to me is like, you know, I don't get anything for that. You know what I mean? I might get brownie points from the person if I tell them, right? But
you're not, you don't feel it because of anything other than the fact that you can't help but feel it.
Right. So empathetic people just naturally have this response.
That's right. Which, by the way, is like 97% of people.
Sure.
97%. Now, it's on a varying scale, obviously. People have different degrees. Everything's on a spectrum, including us. You've got these differing degrees of empathy. But, I mean, even myself, that I'm temperamentally very disagreeable, I think I have a very high degree of empathy that, like, if someone is in pain or uncomfortable around me, whether or not I necessarily, am disturbed and feel their pain, which I rarely do, I can certainly empathize in that, oh, this individual is feeling bad. I have felt bad in the past. That fucking sucks. I like this person. I love this person. Is there something that I can do to help them?
Right. And to me, that's the form that empathy most often takes is, what can I do to help?
Right.
Because I'm very action oriented, right? Like, we can all sit around all day feeling bad, but if I can go get you an aspirin, then we're both better off.
See, but the fact that that it's even valuable to you to do something.
For two reasons.
Yes.
One, because, brownie points. Two, because then the other person's less of a pain in the ass.
But that's empathy too. Empathy is also knowing that, oh, when this person is feeling better, they're going to be nicer to me too, because all that empathy is putting yourself in another person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that other individuals feel the same thing that I feel, which is really the basis of money and the basis of value, because that's the agreement. Like, it's this weird, when you stop and think about it, it is really this weird scenario that I can drive, like I drove from Vegas to New Hampshire.
That's a long-ass drive.
It's a long-ass drive, and I had to stop, constantly. The weird thing is that, like, the idea that I could stop in a place that, and some of it, I had never driven across country before. I had been in some of the cities that I ended up stopping in, but I had never driven across country. And stopping and being like, wow, I'm going to walk into this place that's like, hundreds or 1,000 miles away from where I've ever been. And I'm going to plunk down this piece of paper. And they're not even going to blink.
Mm-hmm.
These strangers that I've never seen, who have some sort of weird accent, who are in some weird landscape that doesn't look familiar to me at all, that I've never been in, and I'm going to plunk down this piece of paper, and these individuals are not even going to blink, and they're going to take it, and they're going to give me back some metal and some pieces of paper, and I'm going to take this stuff that's on the counter, and I'm going to walk out.
You can thank the Knights Templar.
That should blow. Like, we take that shit so for granted.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like going from, like, Missouri to Iowa. I mean, we're talking about, going from, frickin' Europe to Jerusalem. There's a lot of bandits on the road. We don't have a whole lot of bandits on our highways these days.
No, there's no.
There's some questionable gas stations.
Yeah, there
certainly.
are definitely some questionable gas stations.
What is that hole for? Anyway, so
it's got arrows pointing at it like this in the stall door. I don't understand.
This? I don't get that. What is this? Why is there a strange man sitting right next to me at the urinal? Oh, God. So, yeah, anyway, but that's, that was the service that was provided at the time by the Knights Templar. They were like, hey, we'll chaperone you, we'll take you there, and, you drop all your goods here. And imagine the level of trust that if you had, every bit of your life savings in a little, trunk or a chest or something. And, these knights were like, yep, leave it with us. It's good. Here's a piece of paper.
Well, but I mean but how much of that trust, it was like we were talking about before the show. It's like, how much of that trust is because these guys are wearing the symbol of the cross over their armor, and we're the Knights Templar, we're this and that.
We're blessed by the Pope.
And
blah,
I'll
blah,
guarantee
blah, yeah.
you, not all of those guys were good guys. I will guarantee you that some of those guys murdered the people that they were supposed. At least a few murdered the people that the pilgrims that they were trying to bring across. I guarantee it had to happen.
Not. I don't know, right? And that's all I can really say is I don't know. I suspect that because of the types of people that they were, I don't know. Of course we got priests and young boys. And all
What
that
I'm
kind of
saying.
stuff. So I don't know.
Look, I'm saying if you have enough people and enough money, people get corrupt.
People do get corrupt, but then there's the like what happened after that, right? Like which my conspiracy theory about why Jesus was there in the temple in the first place, and what the Knights Templar could have to do with all that. It's there. We should definitely talk about it. But
let's go. We've got time. We've got 20 minutes.
But did we finish up on the render unto Caesar? Were you all done with that?
I think we're done.
Okay.
I think we're done for now.
So many things. Oh my God. So according to one apocryphal story, so I'm a big fan of the Apocrypha. I like to read weird religious books, and these were the books that were excluded from the Bible. They, at one point, were considered holy texts, but then later on were edited out. In many cases, to preserve a specific narrative, to preserve power in the church, to not be confusing in some cases, because some of it's confusing. But yeah, so these were holy books that described the life of Jesus, the life of people that lived around him, that worked with him. And so one of these books actually describes why Jesus was there and doing the whole money changer thing. It was to create a distraction.
Okay.
Because while he was doing that, James and John, I believe it were disguised as high priests, to the extent that they had actually obtained a Urim and a Thummim to wear on their breastplate, which we got to do a whole show about, dude. Like,
okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
We'll just call it ancient technology, and we'll go from there. It'll be amazing.
Ancient tech.
Oh, so good.
That can be the next show, ancient tech. I
All
like
right.
that.
Ancient technology. And we'll start off with the story of the Urim and the Thummim, because it's just mind-blowing that nobody has talked about this. Like, seriously, it's right there in the Bible. So the story goes that Jesus showed up with about 300 people.
Wow.
And so he had his two spies, or two like infiltrators, disguised as high priests.
No, this is who? James and
John, I believe.
So James is his brother.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yep. I think it was John was the second one. I don't know. I'll look it up. So I didn't think we were going to get to this, so I didn't bring the notes. But it's such a great story.
You're going to have to go off the top of the head.
Off the top of my head. So they go into the temple, right? So the two infiltrators, go off towards the Sanctum Sanctorum. Jesus goes in and he makes this big show and like causes tons and tons of chaos.
Okay.
Right? While he's causing all the chaos, his two guys disguised as priests actually enter the Holy of Holies, and they steal not only the Ark of the Covenant, but also the written holy name of God.
Oh, wow.
That was in there as well. So those artifacts were removed from the temple while Jesus was creating this gigantic distraction with the overturning of the money changers' tables.
And the purpose of that was what?
They were his, right?
Jesus's, you're saying?
It was my dad's stuff.
So his idea was that he was going to come in, he was going to take all of these things, and then he was going to do what with it? Reestablish a new temple?
Yeah, so I would assume, because this was Herod's temple now. Herod was a puppet king of Rome. So it was a defiled temple. I'm sure it pissed him off to no end that we had actual holy relics inside this.
He's going to reappropriate the relics.
The real relics.
So what happens to the relics then? Did the Jews did the temple, the Pharisees, did they get them back? What do they do?
Well, I think Jesus was going to do it himself, right? I think Jesus was going to actually take them and create a new temple, a new to go along with. He was really kind of recreating the whole religion anyway. He called himself a Jew, but he was like, all these teachings are wrong. We actually need to do it this way. But I think that what the Ark of the Covenant has always done is given a physical legitimacy to the Word of God, the power of God. Like, it's one thing to talk about it and to see somebody talking on stage or whatever, hearing music, singing songs. That's one experience. If you go to a freaking box with cherubs on it and it's got lightning coming off of it and the voice of God himself coming out of it, that's a whole different experience.
So now we've got to do a show on the Ark of the Covenant because supposedly it's in Ethiopia.
Yes, I've heard that.
And the guardian of the Ark is you basically don't live very long. I think you only live for about a couple of years if you're the guardian of the Ark. You go blind.
Sounds like it's radioactive.
Yeah. You go blind and you die pretty quickly. It's like a real shit job that very few people want. But it's like you die within 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
I think they're very honored to have that job.
Well, I don't know. I saw one journalist talking to a guy who was going to become the guardian and was not very excited about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But perhaps that's just we've reached the modern day. We've reached the modern time, and kind of you have a crisis. I think in that regard, you have a crisis of faith. It's like, wow, well, this is a short-term position, and at the end of this position, I go blind and I die, and that sounds pretty crappy. But I'm sure that there are some. Well, this is again. You get down to the, what do we say? The C's and the D's.
Oh yeah.
That's. I think that you eventually, over time, you get down to that. I think the Ark of the Covenant, that's such an interesting topic. I like the idea of Jesus going and doing this, that this is some sort of like this is like a Ocean's 11.
Yeah, it kind of an Ocean's 11. He's reclaiming his property, really, basically, right? I mean, these things came from God.
Now, what gives him the right? What gives this guy from this Nazarene carpenter's son the right to? Because the story, so here's what's interesting. So we've got the money changers story. That's in all 4 Gospels. We've got render unto Caesar. That's in 3 Gospels. The origin story, not the same across any of the Gospels.
Oh, no. And then when you start reading the infancy Gospels, it gets even better.
So the thing is that, like, in the sort of nativity, all that shit is slammed together, but those are all differing stories. Like the stories, John doesn't even have an origin story. He starts right out in Jerusalem. He's like, he's not even bothered. John's not even bothered with the manger and the 3 wise men and all that bullshit. To him, it doesn't even matter. So, I just think, I'm like, especially with John, who's the more like narrative guy, he's not even concerned with the origin story of the Nazarene and all of this, and why should this guy, he's the son of God, and not even concerned. Not even concerned.
Interesting.
And so, why does this guy feel he has the right? I'm more concerned, or I want to, like, that's what I would want to explore, right? That's what I would want to, and maybe it's in the Ark of the Covenant show that we do. It's like, I would want to explore who perhaps is this individual? Who is this individual who gathers these 300 people? Like, who is this individual who goes in there and maybe steals these relics? And maybe what we're dealing with this arrest and all of this other stuff is like, maybe the point is we think he's got it. And if we threaten him that he's going to be put up and crucified, maybe he'll hand it over. And maybe the whole story is that he doesn't hand it over.
And it ends up in Ethiopia. Or on Oak Island.
Where's Oak Island?
What?
Is this an English thing?
What?
Is this in Britain somewhere?
No, Oak Island, Nova Scotia. We could drive there, literally.
Well, maybe we should.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Oak Island. We've got about 10 minutes left. So tell us an Oak Island story.
In the 1700s, there were these three young gentlemen who saw mysterious lights on Oak Island. Oak Island is a little island, kind of a, protected from the weather, like in a bay kind of thing. But pirates used to go there. It was accessible, very accessible by boat. And so these three young dudes were hanging out. They saw some weird lights on the island, and they're like, hey, let's go check that out. So they row over there in their rowboat, and they find the lights have gone. They've disappeared. And they find an oak tree, because the entire island is covered in oaks. That's why it's called Oak Island. They find a particularly large tree that has a pulley and a rope and all kinds of stuff. And then in the ground beneath that is a depression. So they're like, wow, it looks like somebody was just digging here, maybe lowering some stuff. Maybe it's pirates. Maybe we'll find their gold. So they get their shovels and they start digging like crazy.
Now, when is this? What year is this?
17 something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's back in the 1700s. So they start digging, and they dig down about 10 feet. They find a layer of, I believe it was coconut fiber, I want to say, or it was maybe it was logs. I don't know. I think it was actually logs. So they found logs, and they moved those out of the way. They dug down another 10 feet, and this project wasn't like an overnight thing. This took
Jesus
months.
Christ.
It took months. So they kept, digging and digging and digging. They finally got down. At some point, they did find a layer of coconut, which was very weird because coconut doesn't exist within about 800 miles of this place. Yeah. So they find this layer of coconut. Then they find a stone slab, and it's in code. And the weird thing is, it looks almost like one of the old Roman ciphers, or something you would see in a Masonic text. It's pretty cool.
Do they have this slab somewhere?
They have a tracing.
Okay.
The original slab was lost for many, many years, and I think just maybe last year they thought they had found it in a shop somewhere in Nova Scotia where it had been just used to prop a thing open or something. So anyway, their discoveries of this treasure shaft, right?
What's below the stone?
So there were various translations. Nobody's got it right. I really don't know what it said, but it basically indicated to them that they needed to keep going. It was because the stone was sitting on another layer of logs. So every 10 feet there would be a layer of these logs, and then at some point there was coconut fiber, and then they got down to the stone slab, and then they're like, we got to keep going and figure out what's down here. Well, eventually it flooded.
Oh shit.
So then they got a hold of a mining company. The mining company comes in, and from the 1700s this thing has built into a freaking phenomenon. Most of the island at one point had been just completely destroyed because people were out there digging with heavy equipment, trying to get to the bottom of it. For the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a team which have actually been working with the Canadian government and the conservation people and the archaeologists. They're trying to make it really legit at this point. There is definitely something there. There are a lot of theories about what that might be. There have been bits of gold chain. There's been pottery. There have been things that have been dug up out of the Oak Island pit and other places on the island that predate the original dig by hundreds of years. In fact, recently they found it was a figurine that was very reminiscent of some Templar artwork that had to be, like from the 1100s, and they're saying, like, why is this here on this island? Well, one of the big theories about what could be on the island are Templar artifacts and Templar treasure, because that's one of the places that the Templars could have gone when they were suppressed. So when they were suppressed by, the king and the pope, the ones that escaped, because they had vast resources, and those resources were not confiscated. Those resources disappeared with them. So where did all that gold go? Where did all that money go? A lot of people think that it was hidden. Some of it may have gone to Scotland. Some of it may have gone to Oak Island. And that's what they're thinking may be there, is some of the Templar treasure, some artifacts, some religious items, documents, things like that. And,
wow,
this is a weird place. They found a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense, things that should not be there, should never have been there. Like, why would there be, a Templar artifact, a little figurine from the 1100s? Why would it be on an island in Nova Scotia? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? They dug up one of the drill holes that they put in, brought up 2 pieces of human bone. One piece of bone was DNA tested to be European. The other was Middle Eastern.
Oh, whoa.
So you have 2 guys digging in the same pit on a team, basically. One's European, one's Middle Eastern. The Templars were known for that. Hey, if you wanted to swear an oath and do the job, we'll take you. Right. We don't care where you're from.
That was a recruit from their Jerusalem outfit.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like it was one of the first, tolerant groups that would take in anybody as long as they followed the rules and, did the stuff. But, yeah.
That's fascinating, man. I definitely think that we need to do an Ark of the Covenant show.
Let's do like biblical technology or something like that, because there's a lot of weird
ancient
stuff.
Technology. I think that's the next show. We'll do ancient technology. Who knows where we'll go from there, but we'll definitely get. So I think ancient tech. You've done Antikythera mechanism.
Well, that's not even ancient. We want to go back way farther than that.
So let's do it. I think that's a great show for the next show. We'll do ancient tech. Really cool. There's a lot we can get into. We could do Ark of the Covenant. We could do the pyramids. We could do all that stuff. We'll definitely get to somewhere.
The Urim and the Thummim. I can't wait to talk about that. It's going to be great.
So we are reaching the end of the show now. Thank everybody for checking us out. Again, go over to iTunes, Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. Give us a review. It'll help us get into the new and notable. Yeah, the wine.
We are certainly notable, I must say.
Well, we're definitely new. So, and in regards of the wine, Christine, thank you. Wonderful wine sponsor.
Thank you so much.
Yes, if anyone wants to be a wine sponsor for the next week, whether you have a favorite wine or if you are a winery or know somebody, or you just want to help to get us drunk on a Friday night, we are happy to have you do that. Hit me up, show@vinarmani.com. As I understand it, Dave, you may have a new little spin-off show.
I do. I have a new project I'm working on. I'm going to call it Dave Explains Everything. I'm going to be on YouTube, probably set up a Patreon site. I'll do, the whole thing. And what I'm going to do are explainer videos for a lot of the topics that we cover. Because a lot of times we'll hit on something and like we don't have enough time or we get distracted and we go off in a different direction or whatever.
That's Destination Unknown. That's what we do.
It's exactly what we do. So what I'll do is I'll put in like related concepts and topics.
I love it.
And I'll do like a quick, like 5 or 7 minutes, not like a huge investment. Like literally you can watch it real quick. It'll be over and it'll give you some more insight into a particular item or particular thing that we talked about during an episode. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to go back to crypto terrestrials. I'm going to start there and I'm just going to start cranking them out. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, it's perfect. They'll be linked to in all of the show descriptions. So Perfect. We'll see you guys again on next Friday for Destination Unknown.
Indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And away